And so when I became to come to my own understanding that my God, the God that I believe that actually exists, because I believe that there's a God. I've always said I believe that there's a God because I think the mathematics of the universe, the quantum physics and everything else proves that we're living in a creation and everything is created. But I don't believe that my God, with as much power and wisdom and understanding and everything else, would create a people and then, torture them or allow them to be tortured, allow them to be enslaved and things like that. So I just saw it as maybe men. My opinion that I got at an early age was that this seems like men trying to fulfill their own agenda within this text and proclaiming it to be from God so that they can fulfill their agenda. And that's where I ended up. And that really led me down the road of more spirituality and believing that I have a direct connection to God, and I don't need a middleman to get to God.
Yes. Now, what you just said about human agendas behind the writing of different portions of Scripture, that is totally uncontroversial in academic circles. As soon as you're studying source criticism or source analysis, you understand that there's a body of literature here that was written to endorse the monarchy, to endorse the priesthood, that there's a political agenda. The Bible itself talks about a narrative shift to shift Judaism into monotheism. So you're quite right. There are human agendas. I didn't realize this when I first came across the Bible as a young boy. Like you, Billy, my story is somewhat similar to yours, actually, because like you, I began with a love of reading. And I think it was my mum and dad who really instilled that in me. We had a house full of deeply interesting books, and they introduced me to A.A. Milne and the Winnie the Pooh books. And they are written so beautifully that I was just fascinated by the joy of reading and writing. I love to read those stories out loud because they're sort of written that way. And what that meant was when I was in primary school, which I think you call grade school in the USA, this is for little kids, I would often be picked to do readings. But they didn't want me reading Winnie the Pooh. They wanted me to read from the Bible for the school assemblies. And so we dusted off my mum's King James Bible, and I would do readings from that. And that was my introduction. And I found it very fascinating. The language was very evocative. This was about something that was not sort of the everyday world. So I was intrigued by it. And then the next point in the story really was when I joined the school choir by accident when I went to high school. I thought I was joining the orchestra, but I'd ticked the wrong box and I joined the choir. And we started singing medieval church music by people like Thomas Tallis and William Byrd. And what was interesting about them was a lot of their songs were biblical texts set to music. And they were absolutely beautiful. And even as a young boy of 12, 13, 14, and an atheist, I should say, I nevertheless found these texts beautiful. And the idea of this longing after something transcendent, and the idea that the Spirit of God, the Spirit of the creative force of the universe could somehow indwell us, I thought, if that is true, then that's the most incredible and beautiful thing in the world. And that sort of hooked me. Then I befriended some Christians who challenged me to start reading the Gospels. And so I read the Gospel of Mark and quickly realized that the identity of Jesus was quite an important question for the writers of the Gospels and New Testament. That led me into the world of faith. And having been an atheist, I became a Christian, and I had a powerful spiritual experience when I made a decision to follow Jesus. And what happened to me happens with a lot of people. You have a powerful spiritual experience, and then you say, oh, okay, these guys are obviously on the right track. What do you all believe? And so my start point was simply to listen to what they believed about the Bible and think, well, they must be right, because, you know, there are genuine spiritual experiences happening in their church community, except it didn't all add up. And I had questions. Why do we treat the Bible as if it sort of came down in a bubble when clearly there's a story to it? It's evolved. It was written by different people. Why do we approach it that way? Why do we approach this part this way and this part in a totally different way? Why do you seem to take this bit literally and this bit you don't take literally? And the questions I was asking were not getting very good answers. Even a basic one like, so where did the New Testament come from? And I couldn't get my answers. And it wasn't really, it was, I think that was what gave me the urge to go further, to start studying theology, to go to the University of Nottingham. I went to the University of Bath first to study. I did 4 terms of languages and linguistics. That stood me in really good stead to go and do theology, which I did at the University of Nottingham, and also at the Instituto Pastoral Regional de Pernambuco in Brazil. Also studied at the Instituto Machiavelli in Florence. And I went with all these questions that I still needed settling.
Yeah.
And of course, I found out, of course, the Bible evolved. Of course, there was a process in which it came to be, an order in which things arrived, moments in history when it was canonized and the canon was changed and all this. Of course, the Bible has a story. And as soon as you start studying the history of the Bible, and again, I'm not saying anything controversial. Anyone who's a trained theologian knows about this history. It really makes impossible a fundamentalist reading of the Bible. You can no longer regard it as if every word was dictated, by God. You begin seeing it as a document within history with questions that you might want to take to it. And if you're not going to read it fundamentally, in a fundamentalist way, then how do you read it? What are the questions you take to the text? And so at that point, my faith in the Bible didn't diminish. I became more interested in it. But my questions were different. What is the history of this? Where has it come from? What is the information in it? What is the information that is reliable? What's the information that's going to help me if I'm looking to evolve as a person and a spiritual being?
Yeah. Incredible. That's an incredible story, man. It is kind of a parallel story to mine, except, of course, you went all the way into the academic aspect of it and followed it through all the way to an incredible, level. That's just so powerful that this is why when I talk to you, every time I talk to you and we talk about these topics, even others, I always feel like I'm talking to a great teacher. And I'm not just patting you on the back. I really do. I tell Elizabeth this all the time because your method, your understanding, your knowledge is so embedded in you, and that you have it just flows out naturally. And your academic prowess is so evident. And the work that you put in, man, over the years to get to this level, hats off to you, because it's amazing.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you saying that. My position is really not so different to most pastors in the world who have got a theological degree, who've done that further study. Most pastors find themselves in a position of wanting to develop the thought life of their congregations. So they will probably not read the Bible in a fundamentalist way. They will be aware of questions of contradictions, for instance, between gospels, and it doesn't worry them because they don't read the Bible that way. But their calculation is always, how far can I carry my congregation? How much can I share with them before they say, sorry, Pastor, you've departed from the script we're all used to. We prefer the old way of looking at things.
Yeah.
And so though people might think, wow, Paul's way out to the left field of the Orthodox mainstream, if you get a lot of pastors behind closed doors, you'll find, actually, no, he isn't. He's just followed the logic a bit further, and he's being more open about his conclusions. And I'm in contact with pastors all around the world who fully understand my work, understand the credibility behind it, and are asking themselves, how much of this can I share with my congregations before the teaching relationship breaks?
Gotcha.
And it's not an easy calculation, because even though academic theologians have known what we were saying before about the dependency of the Bible on the Mesopotamian corpus. Most people in our churches haven't even heard of the Enuma Elish or the Myth of Adapa or the Atrahasis tablet or the Epic of Gilgamesh. My books, the Eden series, are really, I'm hoping I can help people run to catch up with all of that, because ultimately it's empowering information. There is important information in the Bible which we miss if we read it all as God's story and disregard that we're getting a reiteration of even older stories.
Absolutely. I agree.
With other points to make.
Yes, absolutely. I agree 100%. And just like there's great information in the biblical text, there's great information, like you just said, in the ancient text, that if you apply to your life, you can actually get a positive and incredible result. And it's just a matter of knowing what do you keep and what do you discard, right? So it works both ways. It works both ways.
Yes.
Yeah.